G'day, and welcome to ComicsMATE, your mates in comics from the land down under. I'm Dean James, and as you can see, I'm filming from inside the home of the woke, where everything is fine.
This is fine.
I've said before, 2024 is the year that woke dies, and to celebrate, today we have a great list of all the worst fails from 2023, showing you how much control these woke idiots really have lost.
Know your fucking place, trash.
But before we jump into that, make sure you've liked and subscribed so you don't miss any future videos. They're mostly about positive things I enjoy, and not the cancerous arse that is about to be featured in this video. So without further ado, I give you the most hilarious woke pop culture fails of 2023.
1.
Disney on the ropes after multiple box office bombs. It was a year of unmitigated box office disasters, starting with the ill-fated and poorly executed Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a film that suffered an astonishing 70% drop in its ticket sales after the initial first week haul of $106 million. The problems began to manifest in earnest by the time spring was in full bloom, starting with the controversial and widely panned remake of The Little Mermaid, which failed to excite moviegoers. The film was exonerated for race-swapping the character of Ariel, implementing a number of drastic and unnecessary changes, and perhaps worst of all, allowing Awkwafina to rap.
When I was like, wah, chicka, wah, wah, chicka, wah.
From there, the dominoes began to fall, one after the other. Animated films like Elemental and Wish failed to generate much in the way of audience enthusiasm, while unnecessarily regurgitated IPs like Haunted Mansion were given toe tags upon arrival. Catastrophe soon engulfed Disney as the fandom. Comedians and even the mainstream media caught the strong, copperish odor of blood in the water. The once iconic family-oriented company had been dealt a series of massive defeats that extended across the aisle into their streaming catalogue, where they arguably fared worse. Disney has fallen so far from grace in the eyes of the general audience. You used to be able to just put on a Disney movie without knowing what it was and know that your child would be getting a wholesome, family-friendly movie with no real-world politics overtly shoved down your throats. Those days are far gone. I, for one, will never let my kids watch a single Disney movie, even the old ones. They're going to grow up not knowing what Disney even is, and they will be healthier and happier because of it.
2.
Rachel Zegler and Disney upstaged by the Daily Wire Plus Snow White trailer. Few actresses received as much scorn and rejection in 2023 as Rachel Zegler. Zegler, for her part, made everything worse by publicly trashing the story of Snow White during press interviews and behaving in bizarre fashion.
Weird.
Things got exponentially worse when production photos surfaced online showing the titular 7 dwarfs replaced by more racial and gender diversity hires garbed in odd attire, all of whom looked nothing at all like their classic counterparts. It was parody beyond measure, so much so that Disney outright denied that the photos were real, only to walk the claim back shortly after. Meanwhile, conservative media outlet Daily Wire Plus stunned the pop culture world with a teaser trailer for their upcoming competing Snow White film, produced by their own child entertainment subsidiary Bent Key, which promised a return to the traditionalism of the original classic. Actress and mega popular YouTube commentator Brett Cooper was fittingly cast in the titular role, though it remains to be seen if the reduced budget can compete with the billion-dollar powerhouse. However, the trailer did manage to stun Disney and send them into a panic, forcing the studio to change course and throw out DEI in favour of CGI for their dwarven creatures. Rachel Zegler is the most unlikable piece of shit Hollywood trash that I've seen in a long time. As long as she is in something, I and many others won't be watching it. She obviously grew up in a place where nobody told her just how insufferable she actually is, and so had no idea how bad her takes actually were when she started spouting them at D23. But make no mistake, she's not alone in her feminist beliefs. Most of Hollywood feel the same way about all of us regular people. I will, however, be watching the other Snow White that's being made by Bent Key, because unlike Disney's bastardization of the fairy tale, it actually looks like it's going to be enjoyable.
3.
Nobody watched The Marvels. It has long been theorized, perhaps rightly so, that the initial success of 2019's Captain Marvel was an issue of timing, as it was sandwiched between two of the most colossal chapters in the entire MCU. From an artistic and story-driven standpoint, however, Captain Marvel was a massive fumble, and a victim of its own radically left cast and crew, particularly lead actress Brie Larson. Following Endgame's release, the quality of the MCU films began to erode at breakneck speed. with the studio focusing almost exclusively on leftist political messaging and radical feminist narratives. The results were disastrous for Marvel across the board, yet the studio continued to double down on critical failures like Eternals, Thor Love and Thunder, and She-Hulk Attorney at Law. The film ultimately grossed just a measly $199 million worldwide, making it one of Disney's costliest and most embarrassing flops to date. The critical and commercial failure of the Marvels signaled the end of what has since been dubbed the MCU, and with it, any hopes of mainstreaming extreme radical feminism into the DNA of Western pop culture. Of course nobody watched the Marvels. Captain Marvel is one of the least popular characters in the comics, who gets a reboot every 5 to 10 issues due to low sales. And Brie Larson is the OG unlikable feminist cunt, with her man-hating attitude leaking over into everything she touches, and her disgusting attitude showing up in every interview she's ever done.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
So as a white man who she doesn't want to watch her movies, I was never going to support her. Personally, I hope to see her career end sooner rather than later. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny gets upstaged by Sound of Freedom. In a sane and rational world, an Indiana Jones film would be incapable of flopping in theaters. The franchise has been a staple of pop culture for decades. However, thanks to the incompetence and destructive influence of Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, fans have tuned out entirely. As such, it was no surprise to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny fail horrifically at the box office. The film encapsulated woke antagonism and nihilism, particularly from its director James Mangold, turning the character of Henry Jones into a divorced, bitter old man who is eventually upstaged by his goddaughter Helena Shaw. Meanwhile, another film began making headlines despite all the efforts of the access media and left-wing circles to either bury, delegitimize, or downplay its reach. That movie was Sound of Freedom, a somewhat low-budget Angel Studios project starring Passion of the Christ actor Jim Caviezel. With a budget of just $14.5 million, Sound of Freedom managed to rake in $184 million domestically, with a grand worldwide total of $250 million by the time its run had finished. It became one of the top-grossing films of 2023, and a massive success for its production studio. By contrast, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny ranked in an embarrassing $174 million domestically, losing to Sound of Freedom in a head-to-head matchup. The film would eventually take in $381 million worldwide, signaling a huge financial loss for parent company Disney, who could not even make their money back. Nobody is surprised that the perverts in Hollywood and the freak shills in the media didn't want you to see The Sound of Freedom. Considering it shined a light on exactly what they do behind the scenes, Epstein didn't kill himself, and we all know why his list of clients has been kept from the public, because they are his clients. Also, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is just so damn ugly. I was never going to watch The Dial of Destiny. I could see the woke feminism from a mile away, and so could everyone else. Gross. Hollywood goes on strike and nobody cares. What should have been a big story in 2023 turned out to be little more than a minor blip on everyone's radar. That, of course, was the SAG-AFTRA strike. The strike, which kicked off on July 14th and ended unofficially on November 9th, was triggered by SAG-AFTRA against the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Nobody cared. Pretentious and unskilled writers walked the picket lines with contractual demands in tow, causing most TV and film productions to grind to a screeching halt. Even late-night hosts like Kimmel, Fallon, and Colbert were not immune. But while the strike dragged on for months, audiences didn't seem to mind all that much. In reality, the SAG-AFTRA strike represented the unyielding hypocrisy of the cultural left. Their anti-capitalist ideology took a backseat to personal finance demands, demanding more money and perks on top of their already generous salaries. Meanwhile, the effects of the 2023 strike wreaked havoc on workers who weren't as high up on the elitist ladder. 45,000 jobs were lost, and many out-of-work employees were forced to sell or mortgage their homes, or blow through their retirement funds to survive. When the dust had settled, the radically progressive state of California suffered a $6.5 billion loss to its economy. They're really not kidding when they say nobody cared about this SAG-AFTRA strike. 4 months of crying from weird, talentless commies demanding more money for their mediocre to downright terrible work when they were already grossly overpaid? No fucking way. What's most hilarious is that SAG-AFTRA recently made a deal to use AI for their voice actors, throwing all of their protesters under the metaphorical bus and proving that this strike was nothing more than a ploy to get bigger paychecks for themselves.
6.
Ahsoka's feminist overtones kill the entire series. After a string of disappointing Star Wars TV adaptations under the Disney Plus streaming banner, Lucasfilm began scrambling for a comeback. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy kept shouting one name over and over and over again: Ahsoka Tano, whose live-action portrayal by actress Rosario Dawson was initially well received during Season 2 of The Mandalorian. However, her foray into the standalone TV series was met with a lukewarm reception and little hope for a decent show. Part of the blame can be laid at the feet of the writing team, who crafted a story that went absolutely nowhere. However, the overt feminist overtones were arguably the show's biggest downfall. Both Lucasfilm alumni and the main cast wasted no opportunity to talk about the irrelevance of gender, while simultaneously championing a female-led Star Wars show. A contradiction by every standard. In actuality, the show's 4 primary female leads could not muster up the acting chops necessary to bring energy and life to their respective characters. It demonstrated once and for all that diversity does not make a show, or anything else for that matter, great. Ahsoka was trash in every sense of the word. I was convinced to give it a go by one of my friends, and now I'll never trust his opinion on anything ever again. Star Wars is dead. What we have now is nothing more than a skin suit being worn by a deranged mouse in drag. And it's high time even the most dedicated fans admit that. Doctor Who's wokeness causes massive backlash. In 2023, Bounding Into Comics wrote an article where they predicted that the return of classic Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies would not solve the show's myriad of problems. This prediction proved to be true when Davies began openly spouting radical talking points and injecting them directly into the show in preparation for Nkuti Gatwa to take over the role. Disney's acquisition of the Doctor Who franchise meant that wokeness would end up becoming the show's core and primary element. Starting with the much ballyhooed The Star Beast, reuniting cast members David Tennant and Catherine Tate for an episode more concerned with addressing alien creatures by their preferred gender pronouns, while championing the failed and rejected message of toxic left-wing feminism. The backlash was both swift and harsh, but the stereotypical woke pandering was far from over. Moving forward, both the cast and crew of this new Who have made it abundantly clear that the wokeness will continue without respite. Doctor Who is arguably the worst example of woke trash in this video. Between the new, weird, overly sexual gay doctor, the episode featuring alien pronouns, or the fact that they have a trans person on the show that definitely doesn't pass as female, and is clearly just a dude with long hair. I have long hair, bro, you're not fooling anybody. If it wasn't for the BBC funding this crap, it would have been cancelled years ago. South Park triggers woke meltdown with joining the panderverse. No other single event in 2023 signaled the downfall of woke cultural dominance than South Park's uber-popular lampooning of its ideology. The episode was titled Joining the Panderverse, and it acted as a bridge for audiences on all sides of the political aisle to join together and take their frustrations out on the woke left in a positive, feel-good manner. All, that is, except the usual suspects who were incensed over the messaging of joining the panderverse and how it shined an uncomfortable light on the ideological mind virus that has infected our pop culture institutions. It was an episode that pulled no punches, particularly when it came to the criticism of Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy and Disney CEO Bob Iger. It also sent a clear and precise message to the identity politics acolytes in control of these institutions. Audiences were no longer going to patronize their businesses, watch their movies, visit their theme parks, or pay for their streaming services. They'd had enough. And South Park channeled this collective message into a virtual megaphone that sent deep shockwaves into the collective woke consciousness. Joining the panderverse is the funniest thing to come out of all of this. While some woke idiots will still try to tell you that you're a bigot or some kind of ist or phobe because you are complaining about this stuff, or that it's just in your imagination and things have always been woke, South Park comes out and makes a parody of it. If it was just in my imagination, how come you're now being torn apart by mainstream comedy shows? Between this and Dave Chappelle ripping you to pieces in his stand-up, you freaks can't hide behind denial anymore. And it's absolutely hilarious seeing you all scatter to find a suitable defense against what is obvious to everyone else. The woke age is finally coming to an end. Well, that was the top 8 most embarrassing woke fails of 2023. I didn't mention the Bud Light fiasco, which cost them billions of dollars when they tried to sponsor Dylan Mulvaney, who is a literal misogynist who hates women so much that he prances around on TikTok as the worst, most offensive stereotype of a woman he could possibly be. Or the absolute destruction of #MeToo following Amber Turd's outing as a sociopath and spousal abuser who cut off Johnny Depp's finger and took a shit on his bed. There were many more examples in television alone that showed just how sick regular people are of this woke pandering. Far too many to name. Now, if any of you freaks are still here for this part of the video, which we all know you're not, no leftist can handle too much truth before they explode into a hate-filled rage, I want you to know everyone is done with your crap. You can't hide it, and we won't be pandering to your weird ideology anymore. Regular people from both the left and right sides of the political spectrum are banding together and saying enough is enough. You can cry all you like, but you're going back in the corner where you belong. As for the rest of you, what were some of your favourite moments from these woke idiots in 2023? The disaster that was Kevin Smith's He-Man, maybe? There's countless others I can't remember at the moment, so feel free to remind me down below. I'll be getting back to my regular daily news videos starting tomorrow, but that's all I have for you today. My name's Dean James, your mate in comics from the land down under. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow.